So I was browsing my recommended videos on YouTube and I stumbled upon an obsession review that is somehow worse than Alex Meyer's review, which I didn't think that was possible, but here it is. And I honestly thought this was clickbait, but I've never been so happy to be wrong. It's by this YouTube channel called The Barking Years, which is basically like a movie review, video essay kind of content style. It takes itself a lot more seriously than Alex Myers. It's not as like jokey and corny and but it's just as cringe. Just like Alex Myers, when you sort of fold back their discography, you're gonna find that the weird takes have been there the entire time. You know, the off vibes have been there the entire time. They just bubbled to the surface because it's the subject matter of this movie. And the first movie review that's available on this guy's channel is about the movie Good Time with Robert Pattinson. And if you've seen that, no, he does not talk about that part of it. And if you haven't seen that, I'm gonna give you the synopsis and I'll explain, what I'm talking about. But let's talk about his obsession review first.
On the way it has been described on social media, they would conclude that Bear, with full knowledge of what he was doing, made a wish that intentionally replaced Nikki's consciousness with a customized sex bot and then spent the remainder of the movie happily humping away while cackling gleefully at the thought of the real Nikki locked away in some hell dimension. I guess this is supposed to be the phase of a guy having a great time. In reality,
Honestly, if you watch this movie and you only paid attention to like the first 15 minutes and the last 20 minutes, you might come away from the movie thinking this. And I think this is how this guy watches movies, just based off his other review.
he spends most of the film not understanding what has happened, being skeptical of Nikki's apparent love for him, and in general, not really knowing the identity of the woman he is with, and trying to figure out how to fix the situation.
He does not spend more than like 25 minutes being any kind of skeptical. And he doesn't. The trying to fix this is like maybe the last 30 minutes, and that's being very generous.
Which maybe some people can't tell the difference between those two scenarios, but I can. So let's talk about the
Spoiler: he can't.
wish. They're basically two ontologically, I'm sorry that I'm using this word, distinct possibilities about what the wish has done. The first possibility is that it has simply made an alteration to Nikki's personality in kind of the same way that drinking or taking pharmaceuticals can do that. But we don't normally consider that fundamentally altering a person's identity. The other possibility is that Nikki's identity has been replaced by, again, I'm sorry, an ontologically distinct being that is sharing her body. We, the audience, are able to understand pretty quickly that it's option B, but Bear spends almost the entire movie not knowing this and seeming to think that it's option A. He also has to grapple with the ambiguous moral implications of both scenarios. When he calls the customer service line, the rep even says to him, "It sounds
I honestly don't even know why he brought this up because it doesn't change literally anything. So drugs and pharmaceuticals and alcohol doesn't really affect people's personalities and behavior for this long. What can happen if you take Molly or any kind of psychedelic is an induced mania, a depressive episode, maybe psychosis. These all usually stem from like pre-existing illnesses. Not going to break that down too much, but if that were the case, he would still be taken advantage of, or people would still look down their noses at him, and he would still be the villain. He'd still be the bad guy.
like you have a moral obligation to be there for this person." And if he believes in option A, that's true. Add to this the fact that he's told that the only way for him to restore Nikki is to kill himself. And yeah, I'm sorry, this is a little more complicated than deciding if you're going to go back and pay for that candy bar that you accidentally shoplifted from Target. As for my tweet, the case for Bear
I really don't have a joke for how disgusting it is to equate the guilt of knowingly taking advantage of someone to the guilt of accidentally shoplifting. And I think you're gonna find that this guy's humor is really weird and incelly and angry, and I just can't riff off of this. This guy's such a fucking loser.
being a victim is so obvious that
Also, if a normal person was brought to the realization that they had done this to someone, taking your own, that would be the easiest thing ever. That would be hard for you because you seem like a shitbag and you seem like a candy ass. But this would be the easiest choice for me.
I'm gonna spend basically no time on it. Some people seem to think that saying Bear is a victim requires believing that Nikki is the villain. I genuinely don't know what to do with this level of stupidity. Nikki is obviously a victim. That's why I use the word also. That's how that works. But Bear and really Nikki too are both victims of whoever is making and distributing the One Wish Willow. Bear was provided with an object that was capable of doing incredible harm without being given adequate awareness of its capabilities. As a result, his life is ruined.
He was given warnings. And even if he wasn't, who cares? Okay, this is a horror movie, not a documentary. All right, if you have a problem, take it up with the execs at like Big Wish or Big Magic. Okay, that doesn't matter. You're just giving this argument to infantilize Bear and say, oh, well, he didn't know what he was doing.
And then he dies. Done. The end. No further analysis required. Does this mean that Bear is without fault? No, obviously not. But Bear.
Also, the friend group was also at fault, and I think if you completely ignore the actions of of that friend group, then you're missing a huge chunk of the analysis, which it doesn't surprise me because this guy just loves cutting out the parts he doesn't want to talk about. This guy is not a good analyst whatsoever.
Bear's primary character defects are cowardice and timidity, not malevolence. These are what prevent him from approaching Nikki.
I really don't even want to pause it this much, but I just can't let that one go. His main personality flaws are the fact that he's timid and he's cowardly. His main character flaws are the fact that he's possessive and inconsiderate. Right? That's if he were just cowardly and timid, he probably would have been too scared to continue on what he was doing. But the fact that he got what he wanted out of it and just continued and just was, purposely ignorant of the harm he was causing or just apathetic entirely is what makes him like sociopathic.
Directly and also prevent him from acting decisively in the remainder of the film. But the suggestion that he is a villain is so illiterate, I don't think there is a way some person could come by it unless they were compelled by an insidious brainworm. Let's take the idea that Bear is a grapist. Now in discussing this, I'm going to have to use some euphemisms to get around certain algorithmic filters, so just note that if you hear a word that doesn't make sense, that's what's going on. The first problem with this idea is that Bear's grape lacks intent. When Bear makes his wish, Nikki's personality and consciousness are suppressed by another consciousness that has been created by the wish, in which most people refer to as Wish Nikki. So when he and Wish Nikki have sex, true Nikki's body is being involved without her consent, and there is at least some reason to believe that she may be even conscious of what's happening, which, yeah, that's really bad. However, Bear does not know this. As far as he is aware, Nikki is Nikki, even if she is acting strangely. He does not even suspect that the wish has caused Nikki's attitude to change.
So I'm glad I paused on this. It was good timing because he goes back on this. What does barely suspects mean? And some people have, thrown this out in the air where the scene where she cooks the cat is not actually Wish Nikki doing something nice for him. That's real Nikki lashing out at Bear for continuing to take advantage of her when all the signs were there. And just the fact that he barely suspects this after she wrote that note saying, hey, this is not me. And he somehow barely suspects this after she screams, it's not me, it's not me, and smashes a bottle. If this guy is just that stupid, then I might just have to give it to him.
Why would he? That would be crazy. All he knows is that up to this point she is acting strangely, but Wish Nikki spends the entire film crafting semi-plausible explanations for her behavior. And that means that as far as he knows,
Wish Nikki does not have one plausible line of reasoning that holds out. The first thing she does, the first lie she tells to connect with Bear, the moment it gets unraveled, she freaks out. And instead of just taking this and Bear just ignores this. Bear's just like, okay, she's lying about that. She's lying about something very intimate that no one would lie about unless they were planning something nefarious or just crazy. And he just ignores that. What is this guy talking about? And I'm going to get into the whole Molly thing because the rationale that she was on Molly was something that Ian just came up with. Bear didn't even assume that she was on Molly. He didn't even mention that. And I'm going to get a little bit subjective with how I interpreted Wish Nikki working. But it was I thought that Wish Nikki was seeing a lot of these events through Bear's eyes, right? Like that consciousness that inhabited Nikki was part of Bear's desire, was part of his brain. That's why when it initially switched bodies, there was, it needed a second to recalibrate and be like, oh, your cat died. I mean, my cat died. I mean, your dad died. I'm sorry. Do you want to come inside? Like, that's what that was. It was it kind of adjusting to where it is now. It's why Nikki got up and was so suspicious about him being on the phone with Ian. He talks to Ian all the time. Why would Wish Nikki care about that unless it's hearing what they're talking about through Bear's eyes, through Bear's, consciousness? It's why Wish Nikki knew exactly where Sarah and Bear were at the end of the movie. Because when she woke up, she was seeing what Bear was seeing and could just follow him wherever he was. So to that point, I think once Wish Nikki pretty much spied on Bear and Ian and knew what they thought, it just went with the lie that they already kind of conjured up. Wish Nikki doesn't have like a way to backtrack and like give a rationale. The first thing is the true thing, and it can't deviate from that.
Was he is having sex with a consenting partner. Intent is fundamental to any application of moral reasoning, and it is totally absent from this fake and dumb analysis of the morality of this situation. Do these people also believe that Fight Club is a story in which Marla Singer rapes Edward Norton's character a few dozen times before he falls in love with his rapist? The pivotal scene for establishing this is the date where...
That's another horrible comparison. Okay, for one, you're talking about a depiction of a real mental disorder, where in this it's debatable that this is an interpretation of BPD, but it's not so concrete that you can I'm even gonna acknowledge that as a comparison. But the Tyler in Fight Club switching between his alter ego is so subtle that he's not aware of it and no one around him is aware of it. The difference between real Nikki and fake Nikki is so obvious that it is staring everyone in the face by the end of the movie. It's impossible to ignore.
Where Bear begins to have suspicions that the wish might have actually come true. This is seen by his probing about the specific wording of the wish.
You love me more than anyone in the world?
He follows this up by asking about her dad, and at this point she begins to throw her fit. In this moment, Bear has a choice. On the one hand, he has his dreams being true. The girl he loves also loves him and wants him. On the other hand, there is this impossible possibility that the wish he made on a gag gift in a moment of frustration actually had supernatural power, and that something he has never seen or heard of happening actually happened. I mean, you'd probably assume that whatever's in this box has reality bending powers too, right? You would, wouldn't you? Go on. Tell me that you'd believe this.
Yeah, if I was warned, yeah, I might. If someone said, yeah, people try to kill themselves after they use this, I would.
Keep in mind that at the end of the movie, when Bear is trying to convince Ian to use his wish to save Nikki, Ian, despite the fact that his best friend is covered in blood and begging him to believe that the wish is real, does not believe him because it's crazy. Bear chooses the option.
I think the whole framing of that scene with Ian and Bear is very interesting, and everything about that seemed very purposeful. Okay, for one, Bear comes in, and instead of saying, hey, Nikki just killed Sarah, I need you to make this wish so Sarah isn't dead anymore. The first thing on his mind is like, oh, so you can be with Nikki. That's the first thing that he's thinking about. And then on Ian's part, right, I think Ian is I think he's vital to the discussion that the filmmaker's trying to have with Bear, where someone can on the surface not seem like a dangerous guy, not seem like a predator, but be very predacious. And Ian on the surface seems like a decent guy, seems concerned about Nikki. And this is exemplified in the scene where in the car, and he's saying, "Hey, it looks like from where I'm standing, it seems like you're taking advantage of Nikki." But he was only concerned about the optics of that, because once he learns that Bear did take advantage of Nikki and exactly how he did it, he's not upset about this in the slightest. All he's concerned about is the fact that he won $1 billion. He doesn't cut off Bear. He doesn't fight Bear. He's not mad at Bear for knowing exactly how he took advantage of her and that he was. He just completely ignores that. But I think that scene is very important to understanding the mindset of everyone in this group, because if you only focus on Bear, you don't see the entire picture.
And that almost everyone would choose. Is it a moral failing? Yes, probably, but it is an extremely normal one. People delude themselves in this way constantly. Anyone who acts like they are immune to this tendency is just doubly delusional. In fact, Bear is remarkably cautious with Wishniki. He is, appropriate to current sexual mores, hyper-concerned with avoiding anything that might even bear the scent of impropriety. When she initially spends the night, he sleeps on the floor and expresses concern that she might have been on drugs. Later, he is so nervous at the suggestion that he took advantage of her that Wishniki has to repeatedly say to him that she isn't saying that. She's acting super weird.
Bro wouldn't be nervous if he didn't... He wouldn't be nervous if he didn't have a reason to feel guilty.
Though he should know that she's not herself, and therefore his decision to have sex with her violates her autonomy. Do you not see the irony in it all? Bear is supposed to be a monster because he violated Nikki's agency or autonomy, but navigating this scenario in a way that these people would find acceptable would require for him to act as if her agency does not exist, as if the things that she manifestly and explicitly desires in those moments are not
As long as he just took seriously the fact that she was doing a bunch of inhuman, creepy shit, if he took the warning sign seriously, then he would have avoided the bad consequences. He's gonna talk about the what was so bad about being with me line, but there's two other lines that were very subtle that I wanna talk about. One, where he says, "Could you stop doing the weird things with your body?" If anyone I knew, an acquaintance, someone I was passing by on the road, was like, turning their head 360 degrees and speaking in Latin, I wouldn't say, "Hey, could you stop doing that? It's actually really inconvenient. You getting on all fours, contorting your spine, and walking on the ceiling. You're really freaking out the neighbors, buddy. It's so openly callous." And then after, when he comes back from work and she soiled herself, he says, "We talked about this. We talked about this. We talked about you not doing weird stuff, like shitting on the floor." Like, that's a conversation you have with an animal, not a person.
Actually her wants and desires, and that he has a duty to presume that she is not capable of owning those choices. He is tasked with sussing out underlying influences on her choices and rejecting her advances based on the idea that her judgment is...
I don't know, dude. The walking backwards, bro, that would get me.
Based on his judgment, demanded to say to himself, "Nikki is enthusiastically pursuing sex with me, but there may be something affecting her decisions, and it's my responsibility to protect her from doing something she might regret later." And so to compensate for this deficiency in Nikki's agency, Bear is burdened with super agency. He is made culpable for outcomes which he did not knowingly choose and could not possibly have predicted, while simultaneously being culpable for not sufficiently auditing the choices of Nikki to determine whether or not they are authentic. Returning to that tweet of mine, the number of people who said something like, "Bear made the wish so he's getting his just desserts," was, even to someone with expectations as low as mine, wild. This was the most popular dunk on my post, and can I just say that the idea that Bear was in control of the situation is so fucking stupid that I struggle to comprehend how a person could write the words without descending into animal grunting. Still, lots of people were exactly this stupid. What's so bad about being with me? This line has broken more brains than MK Ultra. The number of people who cited this thinking that it was a dunk or that it definitively proved Bear is evil has basically destroyed my faith in democracy. Hans Hermann Hoppe couldn't do it, but this tweet did it. So, Bear says this during a conversation in which True Nikki is able to speak to him while Wish Nikki sleeps, and she asks him to kill her. Now, the timeline here is very important, and most people completely fail to understand that basically no time has elapsed since Bear's call to the customer service line. Immediately after that call, he walks in on Nikki standing at the door covered in her own filth. And immediately after that, they go to Ian's party. And then immediately after that, they go to the hospital.
Bro, what the fuck are you talking about? No time passed. A bunch of time passed and things happened within that time. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, a bunch of things happened that were very important.
And then to bed. He's only just begun to grasp the reality of the situation when he has this conversation with True Nikki.
And what's really nagging me is the fact that he's skating over what happens in the scene. Oh yeah, she just goes to the hospital. No, she just seriously injures herself, and it seems the hospital can't even admit her because she's not willing to go in, and they can't force her to be there. Now I understand now this would be incredibly frustrating for Bear, but then him hearing her plead, her actually having control of her own thoughts, plead to be put down, to be put out of her misery. And it's not just that he only thinks about himself in that situation. Okay, I'm gonna actually let this play a little bit more.
She says it to him as he is on his way out the door to meet Sarah. So let's do a little multiple choice quiz. After asking this question and hearing Nikki say that she's never been with him, does Bear A, laugh at her and say, well, sucks to suck, I guess? B, continue taking advantage of her with full knowledge of her lack of consent? C, kick a puppy? Or D, none of those things, you complete nutter? Like the most that you...
Ding, 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 ding. He does E. He cheats on her. He cheats on her. That same night. What was the point of bringing this up? This doesn't help your case in the slightest.
You can say about this comment is that Bear is being very selfish by fixating on his insecurity rather than the more serious concerns of Nikki, but that's it. That's all.
That is so brazenly missing the point that it actually hurts a little bit. The problem with that is that he never even gave her the chance to choose this for herself. He never even gave her the ability to be honest about her feelings as well. He would much rather take advantage of her than put himself out there and be vulnerable with his emotions. That's what's messed up about it. The insecurity is just... you have to read into the subtext. The insecurity is just the blanket on top. And the fact that this guy can't see that. I mean, it's not surprising. I see why he made this. I see who this is for. But it's nonetheless just so disgusting.
All you got. If this is your smoking gun for Bear being a villain, then the real smoking gun is the one that should have gone off and you're... Okay, I'm gonna stop myself now.
And what is this humor, bro? Like, what is... That doesn't even make...
None of this is to say that Bear is perfect or even a good guy, but these people are literally missing the point of these kinds of stories. Bear is a flawed character, but he is flawed in very normal ways. He means well, but he's weak-willed and prone to deluding himself.
If this guy means well, what does an abuser look like in this guy's eyes? I would really love to unravel that.
His greatest fault is that he's willing to accept something that he hasn't earned, Nikki's love. The effect that the wish has is to deceive Bear into thinking that he's gotten what he wanted, when really...
Actually, I lied. I know exactly what he would do. If you watch the movie with the straight up Predator as the main character, you know what he's gonna do? He's gonna call them a flawed character. He's gonna say exactly that.
The wish is destroying that thing, and the purpose of the story is for him to come to that realization. It takes him a while because when presented with a choice between a desirable lie and the possibility of a painful truth, he chooses the lie. Something which you can see people do.
No, he never gets there. He realizes exactly what he's doing pretty early on, and he just chooses to ignore it until it negatively affects him and ruins his life and everyone's life around him. He never learns.
Every day, everywhere you look. In a lot of ways, the story is a classic tragedy, except that it doesn't take itself seriously and the comedic elements are so strong that they dominate the tragic ones. So it's kind of retarded for people to performatively condemn him for not already having the understanding, which is the point of the story. Like, do you get it yet? The conversation around this movie is just a bunch of idiot hyenas high-fiving each other for knowing more than the fake person in the make-believe story. Do these people have any idea how pathetic they are? It also strikes me as odd that at a time when so many people literally cannot shut the fuck up about empathy, so many of those same people are performatively withholding said empathy from.
My reaction was that same guy from Tropic Thunder, where it's just this guy sounds like someone who spends way too much time on Twitter. And considering that this entire video is basically inspired by the responses and everything from his tweet about hot takes on obsession, I think that's right on the money. This guy I just feel the loser energy coming through the screen. I feel you, guy from Tropic Thunder. I feel the same way.
A character in a work of make-believe. But here we are. There is something very 1984 2 minutes of hate about the whole situation. You can tell these people get off on performatively condemning this fictional character. Anyway, there's not some great way to round this out, since basically this video is just about people failing at cultural literacy. There are a lot more interesting things that could be said about this movie, and maybe I'll do that in another video, but it is what it is. Somebody needed to say it. The stupidity has been allowed to grow too long and too much, and I'm prepared to be the well-actually guy every now and then.
Alright, so that video was absolutely excruciating, but we got more. So the first video that's available on this guy's channel is about the movie Good Time with Robert Pattinson. Now, if you haven't watched that, I really don't recommend it. It's a decently shot film. It's a really just meandering story. But to give you the long and short of it, it's about this hoodlum dude in his mid-20s who decides to rob a bank with his little brother who's like he's mentally impaired and deaf. So they get dye packs and end up having to flee from the cops. His brother gets arrested, and he spends the entire movie trying to find a way to get the bond money to get his brother out of there. And in there's a scene involving I think 15 or 16-year-old character, and he does a snagatory cape. It rhymes with snagatory cape. That's what I'm going to leave it at. And the reason I'm not playing this video is because he talks about The Old Man and the Sea, the book by Ernest Hemingway, for like half of it, for whatever reason, and he never brings up that scene. I promise you. So he really only talks about the first 15 minutes of the movie and like the last 5 minutes. But instead of talking about all the shitty stuff this guy does, he just goes with, oh, well, he really cares about his brother. And then that's really the heart of this movie, which I'm going to get to. But he's a flawed character, you know? He's flawed, but he wants to redeem himself. He wants to do good, which is also complete horseshit. The character in this movie is a just full-blown piece of shit. And even by the end of the movie, right, when he's trying to get the money to get his brother out of there, he's committed so many crimes and is tied up in all of this stuff that his name and face is on the news. There's a warrant out for his arrest. Even if he got the bail money, he's not going to be able to just bail his brother out and take him while there's a warrant out for it, while he's a wanted man. And secondly, the way he's trying to get the last little bit of money is to try to sell back this bottle of acid, LSD, that he stole. Right? But the amount of money he's trying to bargain for is not even enough to pay the bond. So he's clearly just trying to take the money and run, like flee the country. So by the end of the movie, he's completely abandoned the idea of saving his brother. So his only sympathetic goal, he's completely abandoned. And within that time, he's found the time to do a snagatory cape on someone that tried to help him, someone that got him a place to hang out for a while and helped him steal a car. That's this guy's version of a flawed character. Are the dots aligning for us? Anyway, this guy is a real piece of work. His analysis of stuff is so empty. It's missing all these details. And I love how Obsession is just cracking people open and just spreading people open and just letting you see the darkness inside of them. This video's done. Thank you. Like and subscribe.